Hey everyone, my name is David Chitel, CEO of NGL Collective, and welcome to another episode of Hispanicize Hangout. Today, I am super pleased to announce we have an amazing guest by the name of Claudia Romo Edelman. She is the founder and CEO of We Are All Human Foundation, an organization devoted to ensuring that equity, diversity, and inclusion is at the heart of social, economic, and political agendas with policymakers and strategic partners across many different industries. So with that, I would like to welcome Claudia to the show. Hola, Claudia.
Hola, thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you here today.
I love that you're having Hispanicize Hangouts. I love what you're doing. This is great.
We're all hanging out, you know, we're sheltering in place and hanging out. And since we can't have a Hispanicize live event at the moment, this is the next best thing.
Fantastic, love it. Love being part of it.
I know, and I know you've been a part of Hispanicize for many years, so thank you for now being part of virtual Hispanicize. So Claudia, what I'd like to do, you know, we have our nice little show here, but you've been on television and you're all over the news, okay? People are hearing from you, and some people know who you are and your backstory, some people do not. I have had the pleasure over the last, 6-12 months to get to know you, and I've really enjoyed doing that, and you've got such an interesting story. I think many people know you came initially from Mexico. Not everyone knows you lived for many years in Switzerland and you worked with the UN. You actually worked with my good friend Bono on the RED campaign, the World Economic Forum. Talk to me a little bit about your backstory, as much as you're comfortable telling, just to give some context about who you are and where you came from.
Yes, awesome. Wow, what a great opportunity to be able to talk to you and your incredible audience. I do admire and love Hispanicize. I was very pleased to be your chair and co-chair for a number of years of Hispanicize when we started bringing companies, CMOs, to Hispanicize, and I was incredibly impressed about the influence that you have, Hispanicize Kitchen, the moms, and I think it is fantastic to be able to have an opportunity to tell my story to those audiences. I was one of 3 kids that my mother and my father had, both basketball players. Thus, I am the product of a ball in a way, and so. When the 3 of us, when my parents got married and they started having kids, they didn't know, but they had an incredible incompatibility, genetic incompatibility, very rare. And so all of us overdeveloped super fast. So instead of instead of walking, we were running very fast, and we were much earlier than one should. But both of my siblings actually reached the 9-month mark and started going backwards. So from running to walking to crawling, to not being able to move, and both passed away when they were 18 months old. So I grew up in a microscope pretty much. Everybody was looking at me whether I was going to breathe or not, and I was going to make it or not. And over the years, I got that reiteration that I was very strong. Everybody was like, as a fact, you're stronger than death. So I grew up with that sense that everything is possible. If you're bombarded with this idea that you were supposed to be dead and you're alive, you're so strong, but also a sense that I think that I had there must be a reason why. And so put those two together, everything is possible and there must be a vision. And I grew up pretty much being a mafalda, right? Fighting for justice. And from the very early on, I was very inclined to defend the most vulnerable of all circumstances. And I had the blessing to be able to do that my entire life. I studied communication and political science. I did a degree on philosophy and also in film. And I put all of that to be working for 25 years, trying to bring the voice to those that are voiceless. I tried to defend those that couldn't be defended and needed to be defended and be seen. And pretty much, using a loud voice and understanding and not shining away. Like my father, when I was a kid, was like, "Oh my God, you're so loud. Stop it, you're so loud." And I think that being able to be loud and use my voice to make sure that I am able to bring attention to those things that people might not be able to see has been a privilege, and has been a privilege working for more than pretty much 25 to 28 years now at the United Nations, working for, like maternal mortality, refugees, so working for the UN Refugee Agency, but always from an angle of marketing communications and doing partnerships with technology and the creative industry.
Wow, Claudia, I just learned so much. I know you, but that was really personal of you to share. Thank you so much for sharing that background. And it now makes so much sense to me that you are who you are and you do what you do. That's an amazing background.
Everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. I'm sure that one or two stories that if you really go deep, where you can, scratch and find the origins of who you are and what you do. I am absolutely convinced that there's in everyone, there's that story, and it's very powerful when you find it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tell me a little bit, you don't have to get into too much detail, but you grew up in Mexico, but then eventually you moved to Switzerland. How did you live there? And tell me a little bit about that experience.
So on my from my prom night, even with like on el chongo super high that we used to have, and like with the hairspray like that, from the prom to the plane, I left with my prom dress and went to Europe. I wanted to take a backpack trip for a couple of months with my best friend, and I never came back to Mexico. I was hired on the spot by one of an accident. A friend of my mother said, can you come and help with the Mexican embassy in Switzerland? And I went to help there for 2 weeks. Not very happy because I had to leave Mykonos, where I was with the Greek goddess and having the best time ever. And then I started actually working for the Mexican government. And then from becoming a diplomat pretty much by accident, moving to England, Germany, France, and then getting into the global organizations that World Economic Forum, where I was working for a number of years, 10 years. I lived in a global environment, being a globalist for 25 years until 5.5 years ago that I moved to America, and I discovered that I was a Hispanic. I never knew that.
Okay. So I was waiting to unpack that. You've said that many times. You're Mexicana. You're absolutely a citizen of the world, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. You're all over the world. We see you all the time, traveling to all these exotic places and doing amazing work. So when did you discover that you were Hispanic, and how did that lead you to what you're doing now in the We Are All Human organization that we're going to talk a lot about? I moved from working at the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria after having moved a number of years for a number of times. And I was a part in Geneva for the last 14 years that I was in Europe, when they transferred me pretty much to work for UNICEF in New York. And so when I started looking at the environment and so on, I came to see the schools, and one of the schools said okay, so your kids are going to be Hispanics, and I was like, no, my kids are going to be Mexican and Swiss. And they're like, Hispanic? And I'm like, what is that? So I started actually when I had to tick a box, which is pretty much how the term Hispanic was invented by someone in the census being tired of actually saying so many 26 different things. So can we just put a box, say Hispanics, and all of you belong to the same group? And so I moved to America and started looking at that reality of, of the numbers, being very interested in, in seeing the potential 60 million, 18% of the population, 12% of the GDP. And I was like, my God, finally, I'm going to be part of the super high end of society, because in Switzerland, I was always, or Germany, or, in the places where I lived, I was always a minority, and you could totally feel that I was a minority. And every time I went to a room, having a serious conversation, discussing whatever it is, I could see the exotic eyes of exotic flashing in the eyes of my counterparts, say Mexican, rumba, whatever. So I was always, an exotic piece out there. And I started looking at, we're majority, but it didn't feel that majority really. So the reality of the numbers didn't make sense with the reality of my living in New York and being in the streets and seeing how Hispanics were literally invisible. So that's how I started getting interested. And the first person that invited me to do anything on Hispanics was Hispanicize. And that's why I got involved, because I wanted to understand what didn't make sense.
it didn't make sense that, like perception didn't meet reality, and the treatment didn't equate with the power that we eventually had, which led me to get a full-time job in trying to solve that equation.
I have to interrupt. So this is a full circle moment we are having right now.
Yes.
Hispanicize brought you to this, you're part of the community, but to this industry, if you will, and here we are today, you sharing that. I did not know that, actually.
Yeah, and let me tell you the story. Steve Barrett from PR Week, I was having a drink with him talking about something completely different, talking about UNICEF, and I wanted to talk about like how companies need to do more about early childhood development, how important it is for the brain, and just nagging on, like a journalist, just like, I'm not gonna give up until you publish that story for me, right? And then he said like, okay, listen, I'll care about early childhood development, but would you co-chair with me an invitation that I have from Hispanicize to bring CMOs to, to understand the Hispanic market? And I was like, I want to understand the Hispanic market. Let's go in together, because how much do you know about Hispanics? He said like, not much. And I was like, me neither. Let's actually figure it out. And that's how we got involved. That's how I got involved. And you made me, like in a way, it is your platform that made me quit my job at the United Nations. That was like my entire career, to try to understand this enigma where I'm not going to let go until it's solved.
Wow. In fairness, shout out to my predecessors who founded Hispanicize. I did not work on it at the time, but nonetheless, I am proud to have you on the show now and bring this full circle moment. Okay, so you discovered you were Hispanic. You have all of this background in activism and doing such amazing things globally. And then you applied all of that energy to this organization, We Are All Human. Talk about, the mission of We Are All Human and some of the big sponsors you're working with. Give us a little bit more background, and then we're going to dig into the details.
So We Are All Human is an organization that was created to remind people precisely of that. We're all human, because we forget. Sometimes we forget that we belong to the same human family, and divisive language is getting by far more traction. COVID, if anything, it will do, a part of, like being a horrendous pandemic, it is humanizing us. It is reminding us that we belong to the same human family, that the virus will make no distinction whatsoever, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, whether you're, black or white, whether you're very skinny or whether you're not, whether you're like rich or poor. No way. It makes no distinction, because that is life. That is the way that it is. We are all human. We have the same fears. We want the same desires. We want our parents to be healthy, and we want to be able to see and be able to smile and go out. We all have the same, and we forget. So We're All Human is an organization devoted to incentivize and to remind people that we belong to the same human family, as a way to stop racism, discrimination, and xenophobia, and just like move that area from tolerance to acceptance. We're far too advanced, David, far too advanced in the world just to tolerate each other. Like we should be accepting each other and celebrating our differences, which basically diversity, as you know, brings innovation and brings wealth. So we created We're All Human 2 years ago. We immediately turned into, I was working on global issues. So we have a podcast, the Global Goalscast, to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. We create communities and a number of events on advancing that global agenda. But we moved very quickly into trying to do two things. The number one is to unify the Hispanic community as a way to defeat the number one barrier that we have, which is fragmentation. That incredible community has no idea of their own power, mainly because we don't act together, we don't see each other, we operate in silos and bubbles. The Mexicans don't want to talk to the Colombians, don't want to talk to the Venezuelans. So that's the number one thing that We're All Human was trying to do. And number two is to apply a marketing lens to change the perception of Hispanics, so that we can finally be seen, heard, and valued the way that we should, so that we can finally be fully paid, fully valued, and fully respected. A number of the things that we have done is to incentivize corporate America to be a great ally. So having all Hispanic organizations working together through alliances, through coalitions, through bringing a shared agenda, and bringing people that can enable that and can support that, and that is corporate America. So yes, we have two main initiatives that have helped us to create those partnerships. Mm-hmm. One is the Hispanic Promise, first of a kind pledge to get corporate America to make a promise to Hispanics, a promise to hire, promote, retain, and celebrate Hispanics. In less than a year, we have 150 companies that have signed it. PepsiCo, AT&T, Bank of America, Mars, you name it. Like literally, I think that we have like 50% are Fortune 500 companies. Yeah, it's terrific.
Yeah, and we are proud supporters of it as well. And
you're a signatory, of course.
We're not Fortune 500 yet, but we'll get there.
I know. We will. That's part of it. If you want it, like all of us should be supporting each other. If we're gonna hire Hispanic. If you're gonna, if you're gonna mentor Hispanic, support Hispanic, buy Hispanic, all of it.
For sure. All right. So another very, very important initiative that we're going to, unpack here is called Hispanic Star. And I think, many people know, it's been quite widely touted, that there was an initial intention for the Hispanic Star and all sorts of really exciting, incredible plans, some of which are still moving forward, albeit from a pivoted perspective. But before we talk about what you're doing now, as you redirected it for COVID, what was Hispanic Star supposed to be? Give some insight to that, and then we'll talk about when you pivoted.
And you were part of that from the very beginning, and I'm very, very grateful that, a number of incredibly brilliant people, actually 75 brilliant people together creating a plan that has one objective, which is we're going to be seen, heard, and valued. We're going to change the perception of Hispanics from invisible to visible, from negative to positive, from takers to makers. So we went around, all of us, and with that plan, started looking at resources. So we got a huge multi-million-dollar donation from WPP Gray Wing, Per Pedersen and Pepe Aguilar. And the brief was very clear. We need to change the perception of Hispanics, and we have to showcase the contributions of Hispanics to the country. The idea that they came up with was brilliant, which is Hispanics, because we're so many, we're fragmented, and we don't have anything to unite us. So why don't we create a symbol to unify us all? Think of the rainbow, what it did for the LGBTQ community. It actually allowed for members of the community and non-members of the community to just feel proud and have a symbol to unify them. So they took the insight that Hispanics were 100% Hispanics and 100% American. We have that capacity to be 200% someone, actually 300, because you can be Mexican or Colombian and Hispanic and American. So taking that incredible capacity we have, and they took the star as a symbol, as a goal, very American, like the flag, taking one of the stars of the flag, and taking the ñ of Espanol, and if you put it together, you have something like this, a star, a Hispanic star that could look like a dancing girl, but as a fact, it's a star because that's who we are. We are stars. We are stars in baseball, stars of astronomy, stars of academia, stars of hardworking, and that's the way we wanted to be perceived. We had everything ready, David. We had the opening happening, the launch of the campaign at the opening game of the White Sox Stadium at the Major League of Baseball, everything ready, everything aligned, all the media, all the stars. We had everything to go, and then coronavirus happened. So no White Sox, no baseball, no launch, and no time to shine either. Because at this stage, we just have to survive, and we just have to protect those Hispanics that are, on the front line and that are massively exposed and disproportionately affected by COVID. So we pivoted completely the Hispanic Star to make it a Hispanic Star in action.
I want to read a quote. This is, I don't know, this must have been like 3 weeks ago, something. This is, you wrote this on LinkedIn. You wrote, "Times change and we need to adjust and react as needed." In our case, we shifted in 3 days a campaign that we were working on for 6 months. Our initial goal with the Hispanic Star was to change the perception of Hispanics in the US from invisible to visible, from takers to makers. With hashtag COVID-19, we had to adapt, and we shifted to the Hispanic Star Recovery Plan to use our platform as a clearinghouse of information, resources, and local hubs to help those who are and will be deeply affected by this pandemic. The time to act together is now. Help us spread the voice and join us, and we all have a role to play in order for our community to shine again. And then the next thing I know, there's an Adweek piece, and it talks about how a, quote, derailed corporate branding launch turned into a new Hispanic recovery effort. Talk about the pivot and all the things you have going on to help in this recovery effort.
Yeah, that's painful. When you have a plan and you love it and it's all perfect and then life intervenes, it's hard. In our case, as a small non-for-profit, like there was a number of things at stake. And we are blessed to have, like a number of mentors, particularly the chair of our advisory board, Beth Brady, who was able to sit down and say, like, we knew that we couldn't do business as usual and that we needed to change. And we needed to change to help those that needed most. What she told us was a framework. And I think that that's very useful for every organization that right now is still scratching your head to say, like, how do we turn around? And the framework is to understand, number one, what is your superpower? What are the things that you have that are unique for your value proposition that no one else has? In our case, we had a network. We had a network and we had a platform. We had a network of people that wanted to do things together and that wanted to, that we could activate. So the number two thing was to understand the framework of the now, near, and next. Understanding that what we had should be postponed to the next, because right now, when you have a crisis, you have to act on the now. And that now, in our case, is resolving the needs of the time in which you're living so that your business proposition can add value as opposed to being a supercharged. You cannot be, you cannot be talking about like giving food to someone that already ate. So you have to actually adapt that need. The number two was the near, and understand what are the things that we could start building upon that look like a second, like looking at 2 steps ahead. And number three is look at what we could do next. So having that framework of understanding what are the things that World Human really had that we could apply, and knowing how to apply them to the now, helped us to really, really quickly change and pivot it and repurpose all the infrastructure, all the networks, and all the capabilities that we had to move them around, to make Hispanic Stars to be in action, so that we could help and mitigate Hispanics by unifying them, which is something we do, and then activate all the network. With all the Rolodex that I have and that all of us together have, we can activate every CEO, every company, every network, and every organization so that we can have a plan that is going to help our community. This is the time in which we need all hands on deck. This is a time in which Hispanics that have lost their job need to pay their bills. This is a time in which all Hispanics that are in the front lines need to be supported. And this is the time in which all of us need to elevate the problem so that we're conscious of all the actions that we're taking, and we can be very grateful for the contributions that Hispanics are doing, not only through the centuries, but also today, which we're running the country.
Spectacular, spectacular. The fact that you were able to pivot it in 3 days, you and Beth and everyone else who I know at the organization, kudos to you all. If someone is watching this and wants to get involved, what should they do?
HispanicStar.org. We need everyone on board. We need Hispanic. What we really need is to have a very clear understanding with that we don't win this alone. We only win this together. And the faster that we coordinate, that we're all together under one single plan, the easier it is for all of us to recover faster and be back on our feet. It is the time for the Hispanic community to be a role model, to share lessons about how to coordinate as a community, how to organize. Let other communities come and say, like the African community, come and say how great the Hispanics are doing in recovering and responding together. Let us actually be that by joining forces, become involved. Be a Hispanic Star ambassador, understand what David is doing, and all of us have different ways in which we're going to be activating. The point is to be united and to be coordinated and to make sure that if you want to join, we're just a resource, a platform to unify what everybody's doing. So we would love to showcase what David is doing, what other organizations are doing, so that people know, okay, I can contribute here, I can join here, I can watch this space. So become a Hispanic Star ambassador, act at the local level. We have 25 different hubs that were created overnight in different cities all across the country to take local action and local priorities. If you feel something now when you hear this and there's a calling, don't hesitate. Just join HispanicStar.org.
Terrific, terrific. Yes, happy to be a part of it myself.
Of course you are.
Absolutely.
We love you.
Now we're all paying it forward here and coming together, and having you on the show is another small way. Hopefully it's spreading the word. Talk about, the idea of unity and this particular mechanism that was put out in the marketplace the other day, which was the Spanish national anthem, El Pendon Estrellado, which you utilized. Most of us weren't even aware this existed, as a galvanizing force to help unite us all. And how did you come across this? What is a little bit of the backstory, and what's been the feedback so far since you put it out there?
The El Pendón Estrellado is like a treasure. It is a treasure that symbolizes all the treasures that Hispanics have in their heritage that we have not discovered. We have not discovered a lot. We have not discovered, or we have not, like put visibility platform for all the treasures that we have. So it was what, like we were looking at, what are all the contributions of Hispanics that we have in science, in tech, in sports, in mining, in businesses. We want to create a, like a pool, a portfolio, an archive of all our heritage, so that all of us can be absolutely proud to be Latinos, to be Hispanics, to feel that we're contributing so much to this country, not only today, but since the 16th century. And looking at that, sweeping that, that history all across and the contributions we have had, we saw that President Wilson saw that. Since 1945, we discovered that he commissioned an official version of the national anthem in Spanish in 1945 as part of his good neighbor policy, knowing that, like it was to recognize the relevance and the contribution of Latin America and the U.S. Hispanic community, knowing how important it was. President Wilson died really regretting not having learned Spanish. And, and he wanted to launch this anthem in Spanish, but he died. And so 75 years later, really around the time of the anniversary of his death, it felt more relevant than ever that we could revive that version in order to pay tribute to those Hispanics that are in the front lines of the pandemic, those Hispanics, those 1 million Hispanics that are in healthcare, those 1 million Hispanics that are distributing the goods, those millions of Hispanics that are farming and feeding this country. So it felt really relevant. We launched it a day and a half ago. It's going to be 2 days now. And the response has been incredible. I think that overall, we wanted to be opening a national conversation, and I no doubt think that it is happening.
Absolutely. I proudly shared it. I saw that it's been unbelievable feedback since it's been put out there. So thank you for digging up this treasure and bringing it to the forefront this many years later. It's very powerful. I know it means a lot to a lot of people.
And I would love to have everyone to dig in and discover a treasure. And then let's all share it together. 15th of September, let's all of us kick off Hispanic Heritage Month in a very different way. Let's actually kick it off together by being very proud and making sure that we highlight all our treasures, all our heritage, and that we highlight and we create those lists, shopping lists, if you want, of all the Hispanic small-owned businesses, so that the country can know that if they want to support and celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, they can actually give us business and start actually using our services at every, like at every locality. Here's your hairdresser, here's your restaurant, here's your supermarket, here's, like everything that we have. So let's all of us start digging and finding treasures and being very proud of them and celebrate them on 15 September to kick off Hispanic Heritage Month together.
Absolutely. It's actually a very good segue, Claudia. Amidst all of this negativity, the negativity pre-pandemic and now the negativity during the pandemic, given that our community has been disproportionately affected by it, as it's been well documented, and rightfully so, we're in need of help. On the flip side of it, I hear your optimism. I hear you talking about Latino entrepreneurs. I hear you saying we're not takers, we're makers. I tend to look at this as, we're a resilient community, and if any community is going to come back strong or stronger and quickly, it's going to be our community. Speak to that and your thoughts about the ideas of being takers, you're not takers, being makers. And also the initiative that you're working on now with the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, CEO Ramiro Cavazos. Talk about the entrepreneurial nature of our community and our resiliency. I'd love to hear more about that.
What we need to be very clear about, David, is that COVID is a pandemic that is sweeping across everyone, but we're disproportionately affected. And I do want to mention a couple of data points, and I know that everybody is like, there she comes and there with the data, but I'm a marketer, I'm sorry, and I live through data, but it is important. we are disproportionately affected in three ways: health, economy, and exposure. On the health level, COVID is killing more Hispanics than any other group in America. 34% of all the deaths in New York are Hispanics. That makes it 29% of the total city. If you extrapolate that to the national level, we're the community that will be most affected by COVID at the health level. 65% of Hispanics don't have a health insurance. And if you start looking at that, we're disproportionately, going to be affected at the health level. And 44% of Hispanics do not recognize and are, are in denial about COVID. Maybe because they are not, they're not getting the right information. Maybe they're not getting the right information in language. But we, at the health level, we're disproportionately affected. At the economic level, there's absolutely no question that our small businesses, entrepreneurs, and independent workers, that is 17% of the working force of America, the workforce of America, have been affected because we work in those industries that have been affected the most. Shut down every restaurant, every hotel, the service economy, the gig economy, the sharing economy. So 1 in every 4 small businesses are at the brink of closing. 50% of Hispanics, 49% of Hispanics have in their own household already felt a pay cut or have lost their jobs. That is 50% of our community. That is massive. I cannot tell you how much this is going to be affecting the country. Hispanic small businesses generate $700 billion in sales per year. And the last thing is that we're the most exposed to COVID because we're in the front line. We're 19 million Hispanics working what we call essential functions. 1 million in healthcare, 1 million in truck drivers, 1 million, we're pretty much running this country. We're out there exposing our lives, delivering the packages and doing everything. And when you put all of that together, we don't have that crying call saying Hispanics are the most affected, let's do the rapid response for Hispanics, and we need to elevate that. But at the same time, and I don't say that much because I want to build the case for support first, we're disproportionately affected, we're disproportionately equipped as well to come out of these ones because we're the resilient. So we know what a punch in the face looks like. We know what a no looks like. We know what rejection looks like already. And we have an entrepreneurial mindset. If they say, if we're resourceful, there is no tomorrow. We're hard workers, there's no tomorrow. So if there's a community that is going to come out faster and that is going to develop on the V, it's gonna come back on a V turn, is us. We just have to be sure that we have a plan. And that's all I'm saying is we're disproportionately affected. We need to make the case, but we're disproportionately equipped, and therefore we need a plan. And we need a plan so that we can return in a V way. So we're going fast, we're going up, as opposed to a U-turn, which is probably what America will feel, that slow change, or an L, which is what a number of other economies around the world we're going to have. So I do think that the key here is to be united and to have a plan and to make sure that all hands in deck for Hispanics.
100%. So again, to recap, disproportionately affected, but also much better equipped than most to bounce back quickly and stronger than ever. I just think it's so important to put that narrative out there as much as we are the emergency that's impacting the community. We don't want to give a perception of weakness or that we're any different than anyone else. If anything, perhaps we're even more equipped to come back quickly and are running this country from the ground up and the top down. I mean, we're impacting it in so many different ways, and it's critical to support our community. So thank you for sharing that message.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's get united. Let's do this together.
We're doing it. The two of us right now, and many of you are watching this, hopefully. So let's talk about this. So it's actually a good segue because you are one of very few people who has a global sort of footprint. We talked about this, it's your background, it's where you come from. You lived in Switzerland, you went to Davos for many years. I saw you and some of my other friends over in Davos, a small group, this year. We had big plans for Cannes. I was going to go. It was my sophomore Cannes. You've been going for 25 years, I think. Talk about those global tent poles and why they're just as important as what we're doing here in the States, in a local level, if you will, and how that those tent poles will elevate everything that we're doing in us as an industry.
We need to go where decision makers are. We need to have a narrative and then bring it to the people that will generate change and that will do it for us. And for me, it was very clear that having worked for the United Nations for so many years, I asked actually, how many times have we discussed Hispanics here? And there was no time. So I was like, we have to go where we need to go, and we have not been. And going to the United Nations as a neutral platform to bring everybody together and get that sense of a shared agenda, I think that was very important. And then once we had a little bit of a sense of, yep, this is what we are. We are powerful and a growth engine, and that is a narrative. And if someone is going to associate it with something, should be with growth and with hard work and with, with opportunity, not with anything else. We're not going to take anything else, and the people that need to hear it are the people that are running companies. So let's go to the World Economic Forum and bring that narrative so that we go one CEO after the other to say, like, listen, if we want to talk growth, forget about your globalization strategy. Why would you want to invest in 10 different countries in Europe if you can invest in Hispanics and get 4 decades of growth with us? I mean, like, we literally are making the case to the people that we're going. We went last year, David, you and I, and yes, indeed, I've been going to the Cannes Advertising Festival for many, many, many years, but I went for the first time, we went for the first time last year. And, so that we're clear, after so many years of going to the Cannes Advertisement Festival, being in the jury, being a special advisor to the festival and so on, I never even realized that there was nothing about Hispanics. That is the level of the awareness, the wake up that we have to all do. I've been going year after year, meeting a Latina. After moving to the States, I never even realized there was not a single session on Hispanics. There was no case study on Hispanics. There was no award for Hispanics. So we went together last year, and David, you and I were part of the first ever event that was organized at the Cannes Advertisement Festival. And talking about, talking to brands and to marketers and to agencies saying like, well, there is no way you can sell anything unless you look at this market. Let us tell you about the numbers that you need to understand so that you can start putting your investment on advertisement spend, so that you can start growing the number of people that you have behind camera and in front of the camera, so that people can adequate themselves, so that you can start looking at cultural intelligence when it comes to understanding that your future consumer is Hispanic. So baby, no, we're not going to take just like the last minute Hola Amigo campaign, no more. So I think that that is part of what we need to keep doing. We just need to build a case and go where people need to make it. Fortunately, again, the good news for me is that we're getting more united. In this World Economic Forum, we were able to take a delegation of 5 Hispanics to Cannes. We were able to get a block of, 2 hours in the official program of the Cannes Advertisement Festival to have discussions about Hispanics. And we will continue doing this. As soon as life comes back to normal, we will go where the decision makers are, and we will not stop until change happens.
No question. So a couple things. I just want to say I'm grateful for the work you're doing, not only here in America, but on global stages like that. I'm excited to be a part of it. Thank you for planting the Hispanic Star, right? Now we have a star to plant, something official. There it is. And I think I could speak on behalf of a lot of people in our industry, when I say, because I've been doing this 25 plus years, sometimes we're guilty of having great intentions, but perhaps not getting all the right people in the room who we need to express those intentions to. And a lot of times we're talking to ourselves in some ways. As good as that is to formulate a plan, we have to get in front of a bigger stage, the CEOs, the CMOs, and elevate this conversation to make more and more people outside of our inner circle aware of all these important points. So thanks for the work you're doing there. The other thing I'll say is I cannot promise. I have a much more famous business partner. His name is John Leguizamo. I think you met him a few times. We're going to try to get him involved. I know he was leaning in, and hopefully when Cannes comes back, or Davos or what have you, we can get him involved as well. I think it's important to have ourselves and others from outside of the immediate business community as well advocating for all this stuff. So we'll see where that goes, but I want to just put that out there. All right, Claudia. So we're going to have a little fun. Imagine this, fun in the time of COVID. while sheltering in place. I do what I'm calling the shelter in place top 10 speed round. You don't have to answer it super quick, but short sentences. Give me, please, your thoughts on the following. You ready? Here we go. What has been the biggest challenge you have faced since the pandemic started?
My mother hospitalized with COVID.
Yes, indeed. What are the favorite shows or particular show that you have binged during La Cuarentena?
On the block with my daughter, Hispanic, teenager, perfect. And then Casa de Papel, Money Heist, love it.
Okay, excellent. Cast of On My Block, we had him at Hispanicize. All right. What are you doing? Actually, I know the answer to this question because you post on Instagram. Are you doing anything special to stay fit while sheltering in place?
Well, the one thing that is special is that we have daily sessions, Richard and I, on our bedroom, which is quite tight, to say the least. But but the other one is like having family sessions, trying to find all the little corners that you can do a little thing, and using our apartment creatively to see what can work for doing push-ups and other things. But I do think that being healthy is so important to being able to operate normally during a pandemic. So if there is one piece of advice, try to have a routine and try to be healthy.
Absolutely. I see you working out. It's good with your daughter, with Richard, with everybody. It is important. Okay. What is your favorite Latin food or any food that you've been eating most lately?
Tajin, I cannot stop it. It's ridiculous. I do it with everything. I feel so bad. I'm like, there's no way I can be pregnant, right? Because this is almost like a craving. En el mango, en la sopa, it's everything. I'm like, anyways, I could just pull it out now. Yeah.
You know what's so funny? I had a conversation with Luis Miguel. It'll be the episode that will have aired before this. And he can't stop putting, I think he said salsa verde on everything. So it's funny, I asked you, what is your favorite food? Everyone's expecting something decadent, and you guys are talking about condiments, but okay.
I know. It's like, that's a food. That's over, coffee, tajin.
I, on the other hand, have been eating my emotions, and I would have to say Pringles. Pringles would be my go-to. All right, anyways. What are you doing to stay sane right now, other than, of course, exercising?
Staying sane?
Yeah.
I think that having a routine every day, dressing up so that I can feel that there is a differentiation between day and night. Having a sense of family. So I every day try to connect, seeing someone that I love on a camera and talking for a couple of minutes, and then meditate, particularly since my mom has been hospitalized, which is a horrendous thing to be far away and unable to do anything for what you love. I think that having a sense of meditation and understanding that life is what it is and bigger than what you can control has been essential for me.
Absolutely. I just want a note about your mom. Thank you for sharing that with all of us. That's obviously very personal, and I've reached out to you directly to share my thoughts, and I know we're all with you, and you're incredibly strong and brave to put it out there the way you are. So I just want to recognize that for me.
Thank you.
Okay. Other than Dr. Fauci, who has comforted you most lately?
Dr. David Navarro. To be honest, this is my former boss at the United Nations, who is a special advisor for COVID for the World Health Organization. His voice talking to us every Tuesday. We have a weekly update at the HispanicStar.org. Trying to bring world-class experts, subject experts, to talk about health, economy. He's been very soothing and calming, understanding, being informed about how dear and hard is the situation, but also hearing that we have to move from fear to action, that we have to move from fear to hope, that absolutely no pandemic will be stronger than the human spirit when we're united.
That's excellent. Okay. What is your favorite Cuarentena face mask design you've seen? We've all seen people having these in unbelievable decked out face masks. Have you seen any that have caught your eye that are?
Sí, las tangas. Las tangas brasileiras, el cuadrito.
Okay, I'll have to Google that one.
The G-strings, like the underwear, the little bikini.
Okay. How many times a day are you washing your hands on average?
Like not like 5.
5? Okay.
I don't go out. We were completely in quarantine. We're not moving.
That's true. That's true. All right. What have you learned about yourself over the past 30 days?
I learned that I learned a lot about my children more than anything. I think that a working mother like me, someone that is like constantly traveling, and before even, when my work was devoted to Africa, a lot of my years, I never had the opportunity to be so close to my kids. So to some degree, this is the greatest chance that life has given me to bond with my teenagers that I didn't know. And so I didn't know that I could be such a cool mom, I would say, for teenagers and so close to them.
That's beautiful. I've met your kids, and that's really wonderful. I love that. Okay, ready? I know you're dressed up, as you said, and you look wonderful, by the way. But I have to ask, have you worn sweatpants for more than one day in a row throughout this pandemic?
No, but there's one thing which I haven't done, which is put on shoes. Since we stopped the pandemic, I have no shoes, so I look great here. But look at this.
What are those, Uggs?
Those are socks. Like those, the Santa Claus socks. So great from here. Then don't check out now.
All right, no Manolo Blahniks. Those are nice socks you have there. Okay, bonus question. This is the last question, and then we'll wrap up. So what is your positive message to those in the Latinx community as we look to the future together during this difficult time?
The message is very clear. We have to move from fear to action, from fear to hope, and we have to do that together. We will not win this alone, we win this together, but we have all the bases and we're incredibly equipped to come out of this stronger than before. And the world that we have right now has an incredible opportunity to really reboost and reinvent the rules. And the rules that we want to invent are the rules in which Hispanics are going to be valued and seen and heard the way that we're seeing right now. So let's stick together and let's move from being panicked alone to being taking action together.
Claudia Romo Edelman, founder and CEO of the We Are All Human Foundation. Thank you for imparting your wisdom, your optimism, your power, and your unbelievable strength to all of us during this time. We're lucky to have you as a part of our community. I'm lucky to call you a friend and colleague. Thank you very much for doing this today.
Thank you so much, David, for the opportunity to share with you. Un beso.